So Stellar Blade came out not too long ago on Steam, and it's been topping the charts lately. Apparently, it's also getting a lot of hate and critics to go along with that. Let's see what's going on.
Stellar Blade is easily one of my favorite games of the past few years. When it first got announced, it felt too good to be true. It looked great, it sounded great, and Eve was, well, let's just say I have zero complaints following her around this game, and I'll leave it at that. It's also one of the only games in a really long time.
Dude, I remember when the trailer for this game first came out, literally, like, oh my god, bro. Like, I just looking at Eve, man. Holy shit, bro. Amazing, stunning, beautiful.
Where once I beat the game fully, I immediately New Game Plus'd it again and just started playing my second playthrough. I don't think I've done that a lot, maybe since the original Dark Souls or even Bloodborne. That just more so shows the quality of Stellar Blade as a game than really anything else, cause it's just excellent for the most part. Sure, it has some problems, but the good outweighs the mediocre by a large margin, so overall, it's definitely a game worth playing if you haven't already. And recently, Stellar Blade has finally come to Steam, and people were wondering, well, how did it do? Turns out, everyone's projections were wrong, but in the best way possible, as seen here. Stellar reached almost 200,000 players within its debut day on Steam. When this video comes out, this is before the weekend, so
you know what I also want to make apparent? It's the fact that there's, like, I'll be honest, I personally didn't think that Stellar Blade would be such a big deal on Steam nowadays, but it is, and I was completely wrong about that. The one thing you gotta realize, and it's something that it took me a while to realize too, is that even though this game came out on console first, it's yet another example of those type of console-only games opening to PC ports that expand upon its own fan base. Like, I remember when PS5 first launched, there was like only a couple of PS5 exclusive games, and Final Fantasy Rebirth was one of them. But over time, as you know, time passes, they started to open their games more towards Steam and PC players. And I always wondered why they didn't do that in the first place. Like the sales of these games, or the popularity of these games that come out on console only, I feel like the developers kind of cuck themselves because they're limiting the amount of exposure that they get for that kind of game. You know, they put a limit on the cap, not on the cap. They put a limit on the amount of sales it will get because the game is only playable if you buy a PS5. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never understood why they didn't do this earlier and make a PC port. But the one thing that I did overlook about Stellar Blade coming to Steam is that because it's on Steam, you know the modders are gonna go crazy with this one, bro. And hey, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna admit it myself. When I get this game on Steam, I will be modding it. Think what you will, bro.
Who knows? It could go even higher. But either way, Stellar Blade has had an amazing launch on Steam and is doing really well for developer shift up, which makes me honestly really happy. As also seen here from Geralt of Gunia on Twitter,
my God. I love that username, Geralt of Gunia. That's insane.
Blade has beaten every single PlayStation first-party release on Steam. It eclipsed the #1 spot by almost 10,000 in its debut and has now more than doubled Ghost of Tsushima at release, which was originally at first place. That is knucking futs, but it's awesome to see. Even IGN had to confirm this, where they said, the PC version of Stellar Blade is already Sony's biggest single-player Steam launch ever. Hell yeah, dude. That is what I'm talking about. Look, Stellar Blade's just awesome. It's sort of like a Souls-like meets a full-blown action game akin to something like Devil May Cry, or more so like Bayonetta. But it also sits between those kinds of games like Dark Souls in its own weird hybrid spot that just really works for it. The best parts of the game for me were the linear levels, cause I'm a sucker for good level design instead of, you know, big open worlds these days. Although Stellar's open world is not bad either, sure, it's a little samey at times. I think there's a bit too much sand for my liking. And
oh my God, dude. Hey, listen, guys. Stellar Blade, aside from being like graphically beautiful, design-wise, especially with the characters, the story is actually interesting. And I haven't played the game myself. I will be playing it, but It's similar to Near Automata from the trailers that I've seen. And I think that open world expression, or the open world freedom that you have, as well as the beautiful character design, really sells it. And you know what's cooler actually? They did a crossover collab with Near Automata. And I like it's insane, bro. Stellar Blade, like shit, man. I think aside from good gameplay nowadays, one of the things that you have to take into consideration for what makes a game is the character design by far. And while that might seem a little bit unusual to a lot of people, because people will say, "Oh, um, it's about the story, it's about the gameplay, graphics to an extent." I think the character design really sells it, though. It does. Like you can have good story, you can have good gameplay, but then if you have shitty character design, I feel like none of these memorable moments make a lasting impact because the characters themselves aren't memorable, you know?
You kind of wish you could ride some sort of vehicle around due to how big these sand areas can get, especially the second one you visit, but despite that, I had a lot of fun just running around, finding upgrades and solving the puzzles to get the things around me and fighting big monsters. I also love how Eve, as in the character you
Oh
play
my
as, they don't
God.
treat you like a child either. Unlike, say, Horizon Forbidden West, that's a really good example actually, where Aloy's just constantly telling the player how to solve puzzles before you even attempt to do them. Eve instead just lets you play the game, and Shift Up, which made the game, clearly doesn't try to make the player feel stupid, and I really appreciated that. Not saying that I'm not stupid, I am, but the thought still counts, because the game is just excellent. My one big complaint, however, is just that I wish Eve had more weapon variety types available. However, it's okay, it's the first game in the series, so it's fine. And I'm sure that a sequel will
Dude,
give...
I didn't even think about that. The fact that Stellar Blade is doing so well most likely means that they will have a sequel. They'll have a follow-up game. Man, dude, that completely like passed over my mind too. That's crazy.
Eve all
But honestly, well deserved.
kinds of new gear to fight with. I would love to see a spear, maybe dual blades, and of course, a massive two-hand sword that I can just crush some skulls with. But regardless, what's on offer here is still great. And when you mix in the fun skill tree, the parrying mechanic, and more, I don't know, man. I just love this game. I mean, what do you want me to say? The story is surprisingly cool too. Don't worry, no spoilers here. But the elevator pitch is simply you're playing Eve. You get sent down via a pod to Earth from your space station up high to fight these monsters that are invading Earth that are called Natibas. And to say any more is a massive spoiler, so obviously I'll just shut up about that now. But I will say, I like the story, I like the characters, and I really
Holy dude, what?
enjoyed how the characters
Oh my, okay, listen. I knew she had outfits, all right? I didn't know she had this many.
designs look too, especially ones
What the heck?
that show off certain assets, and that's putting it lightly. And then Shuhei Yoshida, who used to work at Sony for decades, said in an interview recently that Stellar Blade is one of his favorite games that Sony helped create. He spoke to automaton.com, and that's titled, "The biggest reason for Stellar Blade's success is its combat," says former Sony chief. As Shuhei says here, as you can see, he says the combat is exceptional and rewarding, and it just feels right. And that Stellar Blade's combat to me is as natural as, say,
Oh my god, I didn't even realize they had a Nikkei collab too.
Jumping in Super
Dude, this is a Gunner game. I'm sorry. It is. And you bet yourself I'm gonna play it.
Mario even, like it just makes sense from the moment you start playing the game. And the way that the game introduces new foes and threats, it just feels great and really organic. The pacing overall of Stellar Blade is just awesome. And then there's the music, which I can't put in this video because, copyright, but trust me when I say that if you liked Nier Automata, Stellar Blade is like that pretty much. Actually, Stellar Blade is a lot like Nier Automata. Maybe that's why the game is
Bro, why
so
does he say it like that? That's just it's maybe a thing. It's like an ick, but it's Near Automata, bro.
love it. There's just something
Oh, yo, you want me to cosplay as Eve? I'll do that. And I'll play Stellar Blade.
cool about playing badass women in cool outfits just killing all sorts of monsters. It just itches that part of my brain in a way that few games can these days. Stellar Blade is still one of my favorite games of this generation so far. Because for one, it's not live service, which everyone's doing pretty much. Doesn't try to nickel and dime you 24
Oh my god, bro. I'm sorry.
7 or, push nonsense down your throat. It just feels feature complete from the moment you buy and play the game. game, and I wish more games took that inspiration from Stellar more than anything else. But it also proves a point, that Stellar Blade is truly a threat to what the journalists thought players really wanted. So, slight pivot here, but trust me, this will all make sense and it will connect back to Stellar Blade, I promise.
Before he even goes further, I'm gonna make a prediction because I did that last video with the Clash Royale stuff and I ended up being right. But I'm gonna tell you what I think is also correct nowadays at the very least. In order to have a successful game, you will obviously need to have a good story. You will need to have good, at least decent, not even good, I would say decent gameplay mechanics. I think nowadays the variety in different games is like it's almost like there's something for everybody. So like people might like platformers, people might like JRPGs, MMORPGs, single player Souls like games. All there's so many different types of games that there is something for everybody. But not every game, in terms of gameplay, that is, it has like the same impact. So like there might be simple games, very simple games like a 2D platformer, but it might be really good. Like you can take Hollow Knight for example as a I wouldn't say it's a simple game because it's really Souls like in a way. Um, but like what I mean by simple is like it's 2D. I guess it's a platformer. It's a Souls like, and you know, in terms of the gameplay, it's really not that complicated. You know, you jump to dodge, you use your attacking abilities, defeat an enemy, GG's, right? Stellar Blade is way more complicated than that because it's open world. Um, Obviously, the story is a big part of it, but what I'm trying to say is you don't need outstanding gameplay to make a good game. Because even games with the simplest mechanics, like Pokemon 2, for example, even games with the simplest mechanics can be good games. So, that being said, I do think that nowadays, obviously, a good story helps. And I think that's probably like 40 to 50% of what makes a good game. But like I said earlier, I do also believe character design to be a big thing. Now, not to be like I'm not this is not me going crazy and having like an outburst here, but when you talk about modern games or upcoming games, for example, there's a big discrepancy in the gaming industry with DEI characters or DEI stories where they force upon you characters that don't necessarily need to be in the game, or characters that, like, for example, they do it in movies, right? I can tell you like the or movies or TV shows, one of the biggest examples I can talk about is Scooby Doo. When we talked about Velma, right, which was a Scooby Doo spin-off, but everyone was like race swapped except for Fred, I believe, who was the stereotypical white jock in high school. Velma was Indian, I guess, or black because Mindy Kaling is the creator of it, and that's who she is. Um, not Velma, Daphne was gay. Shaggy, I don't know what happened. I completely forgot. But like, you know what I'm trying to say? It's where like they don't need to have these types of characters forced upon you in the game, but they do that a lot of the times nowadays. You can look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, for example, where Yusuke, that this was a big controversy, by the way. AC Shadows, where Yusuke was a black samurai and the main protagonist of a Japanese-based game. So it took place in Japan, but you're playing as a black samurai who was technically, I think he was real in historical context, but I believe he was a slave. That's what was said. I don't know like too much more about the history of it, but that's what was going on. And then they made him gay, I believe. There is a path where you can be gay with the one of the other characters in there. I saw a cutscene of it. Um, and while the gameplay was decent, or the graphics were good, the gameplay was decent, it still had a lot of controversy surrounding it. And the DEI narrative was being pushed out, right? And quite honestly, that whole Ubisoft situation kind of plummeted from there. Like Ubisoft as a company plummeted ever since that release. Honestly, even before the release. But my point being, the characters make all the difference. Because if you ask me, from what I've seen in the trailers for Assassin's Creed Shadows, it looks graphically nice. It does. The gameplay is decent, not the best, but decent. But the characters are where people feel that it lacks. And I never played the game, but I'm just giving you an example. Because in my opinion, like I said, I think character design is a lot more important than what people think.
So Jason Schreier, who notoriously said that Dragon Age Veilguard was a success, but then ended up not being one, obviously, released an article recently about Veilguard's failure.
The black dude is gay. Yeah, there's a route where you can actually have some like you can have some relations, I suppose, with one of the other characters. There's a scene where he's kissing one of the guys over there. Yeah, I guess technically you can choose who you want to like which route you want to go by, but I mean, the black dude is, yeah, he's gay. Yusuke, that's his
And
name.
then all kinds of stuff got said in that article. It was management's fault. They didn't have enough resources or time for this or that, which
In Assassin's Creed, yeah. And this is my point too, to piggyback off of that, is like there's no problem with you having these types of characters in different video games, but when you force that upon the audience, or when you purposely put that in a game where it's not necessary, like for example, Assassin's Creed Shadows, well, shit, that's about assassinating people. I'm sure there's a storyline centered around Japan because it takes place in Japan. Um, like, I feel like that aspect of the game isn't necessary to tell the story. You know what I'm saying?
is, come on, man. They had 10 years to make the damn game. Anyway, long story short, Veilguard failed because of management and EA, according to Jason Schreier. Conveniently, he never
Why? The
one
game's
brings up
already
the
tanking?
DEI stuff or anything.
I don't know, bro. I will tell you, like I said, Assassin's Creed Shadow is what pushed them off the edge, though, and I'm pretty sure like they might have to sell. I'm not gonna lie, but Ubisoft kind of they destroyed their own company in that sense.
Like that because it's obviously his religion, and Jason works for Bloomberg of all places, which is notorious for being advocates for that sort of stuff. Anyway, then Paul Tassi, a Forbes journalist, talked about Jason's piece, and he too conveniently doesn't even bring up the real reasons why stuff like Veilguard failed while Stellar Blade has done so well in comparison. Then Daniel
If you want to talk about Veilguard, go to Asmongold's channel, bro.
Friedman, who's an author, chimed in on Veilguard not doing well, and here's what he said about Jason Schreier's piece. Despite all the BioWare higher-ups that he talked to, he intentionally missed the story. This game failed because it was defined in the minds of its audience by YouTubers making fun of its quests about pronouns. This is the game that proved that approval from
What?
Asmongold matters more than approval from IGN for launching a successful game. Ah yes, game failed because of Asmongold and YouTube people. Paul
Okay,
Tassi, that Forbes journalist, would respond to Daniel by saying this. It's easy to push back on this, but when the woke debates consume literally an entire online marketing campaign that can in fact be damaging. And yes, Asmongold trashing something does actually matter now, like it or not, that you should cater to that, but it's where we are. Asmongold then would come out of nowhere and respond to Paul by saying this. While I'm sure making videos is a rallying point, the reality is that most people consume content that reinforces what they already believe. There are people who adamantly defend woke games, but no one watches them because those ideas and viewpoints are inherently unpopular.
and that is 100% correct. Like generally, fuck, I'm stuttering. Generally, you're not gonna have many woke games be like number one trending. Like, I'm sorry, but that's the reality of it. It is unpopular. It's not something that caters to everybody. It caters maybe to a specific selection of people. Um, but this is my theory, right? There are different types of woke games out there, but when you include those DEI characters in there, that's fine. Do what you want. Your game, whatever. But because it's so unpopular, and because not many people are what's the word? Not many people are susceptible to that kind of narrative, I suppose. They start to put that into more popular kind of games, so that way it gets more exposure to the mainstream public, right? But by doing that, the only thing that they're doing is really just hurting themselves. Because in actuality, like I said, it's not popular for a reason. Like, people don't like to consume that kind of content especially when it's forced upon you. Like, I feel like that makes it worse. And the fact that so many game companies try to do that nowadays, like that, there's a reason why they end up failing. And you, like I said, we just talked about it, but you can look at Ubisoft as the prime example for this. There's a reason why Astrobot won Game of the Year, believe it or not. Astrobot had none of that stuff. And I've never played Astrobot, and personally, if you asked me, I wouldn't pick Astrobot to be Game of the Year. But the developers behind it said something similar, where it's like, games should not rely on microtransaction, DEI characters, battle passes, or that type of stuff in order to make the game good. Just make a good game with good characters, good story, good gameplay. That's what it comes down to. At the core of every single game, people will judge it based off of the story, the gameplay, and the character design. What is the message you're trying to send? I mean, dude, look at Little Nightmares, bro. Little Nightmares, they don't even talk in that game at all. Not a single word is spoken in Little Nightmares, and yet it's a really, really popular and successful game. And I played it. It's a really good game. It's a great game. It tells its story without speaking as a 2D kind of game, and it's a psychological horror or kind of like a creepy kind of game. It's a great game, bro, and I would replay it, honestly. I would redo it on stream if people want to see that. It's a great game. But it's like, at its core, what is it that you're advertising to the people? Like, what kind of game do you want to make? Now, if you have a political agenda, which a lot of companies do when making newer games, you're going to face backlash, bro. I mean, it is what it is. People play games to escape from reality, not to indulge in more of the worldly things that they don't like. The plot is really in-depth, too, for Little Nightmare. It is. It's really good. The story goes way back. It's a great game, though.
And Asmongold is right. Stellar Blade right now proves this very recent exchange to be true. Why is it that games like Veilguard would fail, but stuff like Stellar Blade, a year-old game at this point, releases on Steam, and then ends up blowing the hinges off the doors as soon as it lands? It's cause one look at that game and you would know the developer's beliefs immediately. The same way you can go look at Veilguard and immediately tell the belief system behind that game too. Actually, here's a picture of Vindictus, that's an Asian-made game, versus Veilguard's character creator, and it tells you everything you really need to know. The point is that players are obviously sick of games like Veilguard, and Stellar Blade is instead what they really want more of, and I can't blame them, because that game is very important, especially when it first released, due to how hellbent journos were to bury Stellar Blade because of what it represented and the whole climate around it. It was too sexy, it was too crude, and didn't have the right people that these types need to validate when making this sort of stuff. And despite that, the game broke well over 1 million copies, and now with Steam releasing it too, I wouldn't be surprised if another 1 million people bought it as well. And as seen here, Shift Up even confirmed that Stellar Blade is currently the #1 game on Steam's global top seller list, even beating new releases like Dune Awakening and others like Night Rain and more. Good, I'm glad, I'm happy for them. I'm happy that Shift Up made games like this because we need more of it. I don't mean just games with sexy women, although I wouldn't mind, but just fun games, you know? But what Asmongold said was true, because that's what's happening right now as we speak. Look, you can complain that, oh, this group is why this game sucks, or this sucks because this content creator said this. All of it is moot and pointless. All that really matters is whether people show up or not to support the thing. If Veilguard failed, and you need people to like write essays on multiple websites to explain it without saying the actual reason out loud, it just means that you're coping in the end. And look at Stellar Blade. It doesn't need that. I wonder what Jason Schreier or Paul Tassi would think of Stellar Blade's success. Is it because of the management or something? Is it because the workers get 8 hours of sleep, or they eat better than the Veilguard devs? No, it's simple. We all know why. They put a woman with cannons the size of melons on the screen for you to play with. They gave you a bunch of cool outfits that you can unlock in-game. They made some weird mythology around their world that's cool, and well, here's a sword in your hand. Now go and have have some fun. And I'm sure if you were to ask those guys why Stellar does so well, they can't bring themselves to admit that it's because it's the anti-everything that they have been conditioned to want in games and write about themselves.
Yeah, so this is exactly the point I was talking about earlier, and I just want to preface this by saying, when you talk about like a content creator like Asmongold, obviously has a lot more influence. He's really popular, obviously, and I agree with most of his takes on a lot of things, not everything, but most of the things. But when it comes to him, while I do agree that he might have more influence over people in terms of like games and stuff like that, I think that if a game is suffering, it's not going to be because of one content creator. If a game is suffering, it's because it's genuinely lacking something. I think if you look at Steam and you look at negative reviews for some type of game, whatever game you want to call out there, there's always going to be negative reviews. If you look at them, there's a reason why they're there. There's a reason why people feel the need to express their opinion on what is not working for this game. Look at Infinity Nikki, for example. No content creator is going to tell you that Infinity Nikki is bad because it wasn't that bad. It wasn't. What was bad was the update that came with it, the most recent update, and how the entire dev team betrayed their own community fan base. Look at Clash Royale. Why do people say it's dying? Why are people saying it's bad? Why are people shitting on the dev team? Well, because it's true. The dev team has ignored its player base, constantly pushed out pay-to-win updates. They've isolated their old original players from the game in favor of pay-to-win players. Like, there are problems that need to be addressed with different games, and I feel like one person's opinion is not going to be enough to influence everybody. If he's calling it out, it's because he's telling you what he sees. And what he sees is the fact that there are tons of games out there that do push this type of narrative, that do have these political messages in there or agendas. And the reality of it is they are suffering because of it. It's not because of him. It's just the truth. That's what I want to say about that.
Look, I'm not saying we gotta bring politics into this, but let's be real, guys. If you put Veilguard and Stellar Blade up against each other, it's like day and night. It's really not hard to see why. Paul Tassi would then respond to Asmongold by saying this: the term influencer exists for a reason. People like you or Joe Rogan or whoever also shape views on topics, not just act as a mirror. On top of that, negative content will get 10 times the attention as positive, which applies to the whole anti-woke industry and why it's so successful. That's not true at all, actually. My best videos performance-wise are where I'm positive and actually celebrating games. In fact, go look at my videos over the past 2 months alone. A lot of those focus more on the industry than, say, culture war stuff, mostly anyways. And they've done better than the Gamergate stuff Paul is trying to say is the meta right now. It isn't the meta, Paul. It's very simple, and I think we can all see it. People just want coverage of games that isn't being spoon-fed to them through a carefully created, corporatized method, if you will.
That's the other thing too. It's not about the fact that there's negative reception on these different games. It's the fact that you want to be honest in your assessment of the game, so you know what you're getting into before you play it. You look at Dragon's Dogma 2. That came out, I believe, last year in early March, I believe, or February-ish, somewhere around there. Or was it? Yeah, it was last year. Right? Dragon's Dogma 2? When I looked at Dragon's Dogma 2 before everything, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, before the game came out, there were trailers for the game, right? IGN was trash, as everybody knows, but IGN was one of the channels that posted a review of the game, and they gave a little bit of like a sneak peek into how the game plays. While it's fine, right? The game looked great and fantastic. What IGN failed to tell the people is that the game was hella laggy. The game crashed on many different instances. People with high-end GPUs could not actually play the game because it was crashing. The graphics were bad. There was a bunch of frame errors. The performance was just terrible in the game. But you never heard a single word of that from IGN when they put out their video, right? It's almost like they're not being honest. And that's the thing. When you put out coverage of a game before you play it, it's important to tell the audience what they're getting into. So if this game has performance issues, if it's better to wait before you buy the game, maybe wait for an update or a patch, maybe wait for a discount or a sale. I think that opinion is just as valid as someone that is praising a game, because they're praising a game for the reason of it's good. I mean, how can you argue with that, right? Like, it's like I said, it's important to tell everyone everything that is either good or bad with it, and then people can make their choices and their decisions on what they want to do with it. So this whole narrative of like negativity is only about anti-woke stuff, like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's just being honest in the assessment. That's all.
A lot of games, okay? I play them all the time. This year alone, we had Clair Obscur, Kazan, Mandragora, Tainted Grail. I'm currently playing Blades of Fire, which is a weird game, let me tell you, but I am noticing something rather cool about these games and more, which is that, if you haven't noticed, they're not pushing nonsense like last year's games did. They're just fun, just like Stellar Blade is, and that's what people want. I think journalists are just clearly bitter because the YouTuber, or maybe content creator is a better term, has replaced them largely. I don't really go to IGN for review anymore, or even Forbes. I go to certain YouTubers who specialize in that genre or game, if you will. I didn't need a reviewer to tell me if Stellar Blade was going to be good or not, because I tried the demo, and honestly, I was floored by what I played. Seriously, dude, when that demo first came out for Stellar...
You got Plat and Kazan? You Platinum Trophy the entire thing? That's crazy, dude.
Last
still haven't
year,
played the
it
demo
was
yet.
me having another this can't be real moment. It was the same way I felt when I first played Kenna Bridge of Spirits, and I love that game, by the way. Please play it if you haven't. But anyway, it was because Stellar Blade, like Kenna, it just looked too good to be true at first glance. And after beating the demo, I put my controller down and I just went, God damn, man, I want this game right now. And then I waited for release, and when it first came out, I devoured Stellar Blade like a hungry man who just saw a burger and fries after a really long shift. Like, I went crazy on it. I think I played that game for like maybe 8 or 10 hours straight a day until I beat it within a week. Not to say the Stellar Blade is short, okay? It took me like 40 something hours for his playthrough. I just love that game so much that I just know life did, much
One
to the
playthrough's
dismay of
over
my
90
girlfriend, but
hours?
sorry,
Dude,
I
how
had
much
to play
content
my
is in
video
there? What?
game, so real romance would have to be put on hold until I was done with my waifu action game. And look, I apologize to no one because I loved my time with the game. Like I said back then when it first came out, and I'll say it again, Stellar Blade is going to be a new mega hit franchise, and you can bet money on it. If Sony is smart, they will invest and shift up even further and make that partnership between them even stronger in the future. Because you see all those live service games that Sony canceled or had fail like Concord did? Yeah, we don't want those games. We want stuff like Stellar Blade. I want stuff that isn't made by people who hate me for whatever reason they can muster. It's just nice, you know, to play something and just have fun. Remember playing games and having fun? Isn't that great when that happens? Because I love it when that happens. And that's what Stellar Blade was to me. That's what I yearn for when I play games. But just
look, the reality of it is this, right? Like, there are games that are like catered for every type of person out there, but no matter what, there's always going to be some games that are going to be more popular, and that's the reality of it. So, I mean, if you want to complain about that, and try to connect it to whatever in this day and age, I mean, go ahead, but I think it's more so like what this really stems from is the fact that people are spoon-fed terrible games. They're spoon-fed these narratives, these agendas, these ideals, and nobody wants that, right? I mean, I feel like a broken record at this point, but it's like there's a reason why Stellar Blade is more successful. I don't know what you want me to say.
Just to show you how tone deaf these people are when it comes to them not willing to admit their faults, Savvy would reply to Paul and Daniel Friedman about Veilguard dying and based games winning and all of that. Here's what she said. Get out of your pathetic little bubble. Normies have no idea or care who YouTubers are. We are all a small bubble of the market. Most people buying games globally don't care who we or Paul or anyone is. The game failed because of its complete and utter tone shift and choices the team made. That's it. Daniel Friedman would reply to Savvy with this. If normies listened to IGN, which gave Veilguard a 9 out of 10, then the game would have sold.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, and it's the same point that I've been making. It's the fact that the game journalists that nowadays that you have on YouTube, like IGN, they are not honest in their assessment. A lot of the times, these journalists are actually paid by the companies of the games that they're reviewing. Like, they're not giving you an honest outlook over things. And that's why nobody trusts them. You ask why there's certain YouTubers that are more popular in this space now, why people go to specialized YouTubers that give actual honest assessments over these things. And it's because the initial game journalists, they failed the audience. I mean, like I told you, you know, there's so many people that I know that will always shit on IGN, and rightfully so. But it's more so because IGN has lost the trust of its own fan base. Or I guess not even fan base, of the public in general, you know?
Oh, really? Because IGN gave Stellar Blade a 7 out of 10, yet it sold better and has more respect than Veilguard ever will. So that doesn't...
This is, by the way, this is the same kind of thing that happens in movies with movie critics too, right? Movie critics can give a, like, Rotten Tomatoes, they'll give you like a 2 out of 5 on one movie, but then the audience reviews are fantastic. Like, I feel like nowadays, the audience and public perception of a game or a movie is almost always just reciprocal to what the actual game journalists say or the movie critics say.
Doesn't really make any sense, does it, Daniel? And stop trying to blame YouTubers for why these games suck. I didn't make Veilguard. Did I make Veilguard? Because I don't recall seeing my name in the credits anywhere. But I did play and 100% both Veilguard and Stellar Blade for the channel, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that Stellar Blade is a far, far superior game. Oh my god, it's not even close, dude. So here's Stellar Blade's Metacritic. It got an 82 from the critics, but a 9.2 from the fans. And
User
here's
ratings.
Veilguard's. 81 from the critics, and look at that user score. And you ask me, these days the user score is what really matters to someone like me, because the people who scored it from the user score are the ones who obviously paid real money to play that game. And it's just funny to me that Paul Tassi and Jason Schreier and whoever else are coping about why the games that they champion fail and the games that they push against seem to win all of the time. And the Stellar Blade PC port that comes out within days of them saying this, and then it just proves it right. It just means that people want cool games. Even Kim Hwang Tae, who's the director and owner of Shift Up, that, you know, made Stellar Blade, said this recently about the game breaking top sellers on Steam. We've come this far thanks to all of you. We were able to become one of the top global sellers on Steam thanks to the support of all of our users. We'd like to express our sincere gratitude. Wow. See how easy that was? Just say thank you. Be grateful that people showed up, and that's it. There's no controversy, there's no negativity, just positivity, and look, it's working for them. And here's Paul Tassi's newest article where he has to admit that Stellar Blade is absolutely crushing it. He even admits here how well it's doing. Look at those numbers,
Holy
man.
crap,
it has
dude.
more than Ghost of Tsushima and God of War combined at launch. And look at how low Spider-Man 2 is on that list, 28k on Steam. Wow, no wonder when they started to push propaganda in that game that it failed too. Also, I've been holding on to this article that's been in my tab on my computer since April, for God's sakes, because I could never find a good place to put it into a video. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put it here so I can finally delete it off my computer. Thank you. But anyway, right now seems like as good a time as any. So this comes from Niche Gamer and it connects to Stellar Blade, which reads, Ghost in the Shell director Mamoru Oshii says political correctness has made Western games terrible.
There you
so
go.
Oshii spoke to PIA News and was asked about how the West handled handles the messaging in their games versus that of the East. And he had some things to say. Oshi would say, political correctness started from the idea of giving legitimacy to the socially weak. There is nothing wrong with that. In a mature society, it is a natural responsibility. However, the problem is that it has taken that as its starting point and made the socially weak into the strong. They were given priority in getting into school and priority in finding a job. What's more, the companies that advise them charge them ridiculous amounts in consulting fees. Game companies ask for hundreds of millions of yen from them. Basically, it's based on admiration. If you deny admiration, entertainment loses its reason for existence as entertainment. In the past, even if you said beautiful people would say it was discriminatory. Western games are really terrible political correctness. And Oshi's right. Stellar Blade conveys what he says here perfectly. It had 0 consultants. There was no need for them to be there anyway. Stellar Blade would have objectively been worse had a consultant from the West specifically worked on that game before it came out. And the reason why the game sold the way that it has and garnered the fan base that it has gained is because it was everything that Western games were not at the time. And yet, despite being a year later, when you look at those Steam numbers for it, it proves that there's a massive appetite for games like this even now. People want games devoid of politics, of all that stuff. Stellar Blade doesn't have some opinion on like the LA riots or something else. It's just a game contained to its own world, telling its own story, and that's it. And that's all it has to be. Right. And it's that key part where Oshi said that the enjoyment of the player and the products being made are based on the concept of admiration. And look, if you deny that admiration of the player, the product, whether it's a game or something else, loses its entire reason to exist in the first place, and I agree with that. And this is why many games from the West these past few years, like Veilguard, denied your admiration, because you weren't allowed to lust for a character or say anything crude. It was all sanitized, even the conversations in the game. You couldn't be mean to anyone unless they were white, pretty much. And it was to ensure that nobody who played the game was offended by it. But maybe what we needed instead was that rough edge, the ability to say things that aren't maybe politically correct, like in Dragon Age Origins. Because we're people, okay? We're not robots. We're not perfect. We're gonna say and do stupid stuff as long as we live. But that's what's endearing about people too. When you play Stellar Blade, you can feel that it was made by people from South Korea, and it both looks and feels like it came from there in the best way possible. And like Oshi said, we need less political correctness in the future. We need these journalists to come to terms with the fact that what they're saying is not resonating because, like Oshi stated, they aren't doing journalism for the admiration of the viewer anymore. Instead, like the games that they are constantly defending, they're doing it to defend the so-called politically correct all of the time. It's not working. It never.
Yeah, so that's them fixing that, I feel like, is highly unlikely. Even nowadays, you know, like I said, they are not honest. And they, like, IGN has such a bad reputation, for example, that it's like nobody takes it seriously. That's why there's a meme called IGN7, man. Like, come on, bro. Who's gonna take IGN seriously? I mean, yeah, like I said, everything I already reiterated, you know, I'm just gonna say it again. It's not a place. I mean, they can be, you know, if you want to make a separate video game for the DEI stuff or the woke stuff, by all means, go ahead. You have that freedom to do so, but don't be alarmed if it's not selling well because it doesn't cater to a large portion of the audience playing these games. You know, like, the biggest thing is just don't force it in. Make the game, for the people, for the players. Make the game with a good story, good design, and good gameplay, and I guarantee you it will sell.
Never has, and it never will. So no matter how much you tried to condition people to not like beautiful women or whatever other talking point, the human mind is gonna do what it always does. And people will enjoy it for what they love no matter what. Admiration is important, and Stellar Blade, if you ask me, it has that in excess. That's why people flock to it, not just on PlayStation, but clearly on PC too. So I hope people play that game, and if you haven't, go play it, dude. What are you even doing? It's really really great, it's really fun, and most importantly, it's not going to beat you over the head with nonsense even once while playing it. And if you ask me, in a world that is filled to the brim with tons of nonsense, it's nice to just enjoy something and put your guard down every now and then. But that's all I have to say. So what do you think of Stellar Blade? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe.
There you go. Actually, that was a pretty good video, pretty informative, I think, in my opinion. That was not bad. That was not bad. That was good, Phantom. That was actually really good.